So for those that don't know you, Krishnanand, you were on the Jeff Mara podcast where you talked about your NDE. And, I advise others to go listen to that episode because it's very profound. And it's one of the best NDEs I've heard, to be honest with you. But what we're going to do is we're going to sort of go into your spiritual practices that you were into before that, and then maybe some of the stuff after that as well. And we'll cover some of the NDE topics as well, but we're not going to dwell on that in this particular episode as requested. So before the NDE and going back 10, 15, 20 years, I know that you were involved in all kinds of mystical and spiritual practices. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, I'm going to be completely direct and transparent with you. And again, there's always this preface of believe it or not. It's up to
Mhm.
you. I'm just going to tell my story and my truths, and people can accept them or not.
Not a problem.
I was spiritually minded and conscious when I was born. Literally, when I was an infant, 2, 3 years old, I'm already having memories of my past life and where I just was. And I'm wondering, how did I get here? Who are these people? Why do they see me as this Scott kid, this little baby? Like, and so I was clearly yanked from my last life into this one. So I was already had some awareness that I consciously worked on in my previous life to bring into me. So by the time I was 9 and 10 years old in this existence, I was already, first of all, I started reading when I was around 4, and I'm devouring books and I'm fascinated by spiritual and mystical things. Now, keep in mind that when I was very young, I saw the world as a hypocritical, especially everything that was going wrong in the world. People were using religion and spirituality as a way to justify it. Oh, we're right and you're wrong. We're causing harm. And I'm thinking, okay, sorry. Consciously, I began my spiritual journey, you could say, in a way to kind of debunk it. I'm thinking these people are all hypocrites, and I want to be able to defeat them in debate on their own terms. I want to humiliate them as a child. I want to be able to debate them in public and be able to defeat them because I don't know what they're talking about. And as I began to become a scholar and be able to educate myself on the topic so I could debate them, as Yeshua, Jesus said, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be open to you. I went down the spiritual rabbit holes and found the truth, and it opened me up. And I had my first religious experience when I was a child. And so by the time I'm 9 and 10 years old, I'm not just having a hobby of spirituality and mysticism. I'm working it. I mean, I'm actually practicing it. And as I got into occult systems and witchcraft and nature religions and things, I mean, I'm not just doing this in a kind of a pastime. I'm getting materials. I'm doing spells. I'm loving this, and I'm putting my heart into it. And I'm not doing this for kind of a sinister agenda. It's simply because I kept continuing to see that there are methods, there are tools that are provided to us to be able to expand and evolve in our consciousness to something more spiritual rather than temporal. So throughout my life, and so certainly by the time I'm a teenager, again, I'm already proficient in astrology and numerology and tarot, and when I hit my 20s, and of course there was a lot of psychedelics involved that really, you know, I'm not saying that that was the catalyst. I'm saying that I was verifying altered states and profound states, and so I was kind of putting these two things together and having a lot of psychedelic profound experiences combined with my spiritual experience. So for me, psychedelics and these kind of things were not just about doing drugs and having a good time. For me, it was conscious expansion, exploration, and same thing with my spirituality. I wasn't simply trying to delve into magic for personal will or personal power. I was always aware that it was a way to gain access to higher consciousness, and that was my only goal. And I was born with this automatic desire to expand my consciousness and be to my higher self. And so in my 20s, now there's a de-evolution there. I get involved with crime and drugs. My first memoir, which won 5 awards, is a harrowing, terrifying, and also hilarious set of experiences that culminate in a Kundalini event when I was 25. And I'm talking full blown Kundalini event. And I didn't know what Kundalini even was at the time. And I was involved with a woman who was a tantric priestess, and she knew these things and these techniques. And I had a full-blown Kundalini event that was literally, I could physically feel my consciousness, my mind, my Sahasrara chakra expanding and unfolding. And I'm not saying metaphorically, I'm saying I could physically feel it all the time. Not just expand, it was expanding, never expanded. It was just constantly feeling of opening. And as it was expanding outward, I also felt the cosmos and the universe flooding inward. And so it was a simultaneous event. This went on for a long time and it completely rewired me. It was also very painful in many ways. Not in many ways, like it was very painful. And that was when I was 25. This put a new fire under me to take my mystical and spiritual work to a whole new level. And I committed even more fervently to it. And as I practiced Kundalini yoga and meditation and practices for several years, trying to sustain and keep that powerful unfolding feeling going. Which, by the way, most people that have the full blown Kundalini experience go insane. I mean, it's hard to handle. And I was fortunate with it because I did prior life experience with it, so I was kind of primed for it somewhat, and I didn't know that at the time. And so, as I'm doing this kind of work, I continue to also have profound past life regressions. And I'm not saying like little vague, abstract memories. I'm remembering things as clearly of lifetimes that I'm remembering in this lifetime. And it's just as real as anything for me. And so, again, my spiritual journey continues on. And as I delved even deeper into these things, I got fascinated with occult societies and cultures. And I became a third degree ceremonial magician with the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis, a profound society that is very wonderful and very intellectual and very smart. And I also became a certified master alchemist through Flamel College with Dennis Hawk. And I love that system. And all these systems for me were simply, they were speaking the same truth in a different dialect. They were all speaking of methods and formulas to achieve the Kundalini awareness and the full blown expansion of consciousness to spiritual levels. Yet they were doing it in their own dialect and their own systems. So again, fascinated as a hermetic mystic, Kabbalah, and the whole system of the tree of life and how it mirrors Kundalini. And it is basically the Judaic and Western version of Kundalini yoga. And I say yoga, I'm sorry. That's the Sanskrit pronunciation. I'm so used, so I don't say yoga. So forgive me.
No
And
worries. So,
so
from what I understand, these all of these practices are or spiritual systems are sort of different ways of understanding the same kind of thing, or reaching spiritual enlightenment or awakening or something like that. Is that accurate?
that's precisely what I'm saying is that as I was studying every system, I realized that I'm seeing what they have in common, not what they have in differences. And for sure, again, as I'm looking for the core, going down the rabbit hole and trying to find the original primordial source of spirituality on this planet. And I go tracing it back, and you find Kundalini and the enlightenment process explained in Ashtanga Yoga and in Kundalini Yoga and Tantra Yoga and the many different systems there. And again, as it migrated from the East into what that was then called Western Asia, and now we call the Middle East, as it migrated, it changed because you can't explain things to a whole different culture. You need metaphors that they can understand, analogies. And so for example, the Tree of Life system within Kabbalah is absolutely Kundalini yoga. I mean, at 100%. And same thing with the 7 stages of alchemy. I mean, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm like, that's so obvious, but it takes a person's awareness that has experience with all 3 of them, I guess, to be able to link those together. So yes, I'm seeing that as it traveled and migrated, some of the verbiage and language and symbols were altered to be able to fit the culture that they were teaching it to, but it was the same system. And so ultimately, every religion, every spiritual path, they're all speaking the same truth, the same eternal truth, which is that the whole purpose of your existence is to simply become spiritually realized, you know?
So, for those that don't know, Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism, right?
Yeah, Judaic mysticism. Yeah, and keep in mind that as a lifelong mystic and scholar of these things, the other thing that I saw is that in the conventional world, it's viewed that mystical systems like Kabbalah and Rosicrucianism and Christianity, and I can't think of the Muslim one, the the dervishes, those systems in conventional culture on Wikipedia, etc., you're going to see that these are offshoots of the religions, and I seek the complete opposite. My research of a lifelong of study and involvement, and I'm relentless in my study. I mean, I only go for the truth. And what I see is that the religions formed out of these mystical paths. The mystical paths are about mysticism is about union with your consciousness, with the God power, and with divinity. And the religions are more about the dogmas and rules, and they're very important. But the religions are what kind of evolved out of the original paths of absolute true union systems.
Now, so there are some people that believe that, I don't know how much you know about Jesus or Yeshua, which is his real name, that he traveled to India and studied Kriya Yoga and then came back or something like that, came back, taught these principles, but in a way that the people of the West could understand. And then, of course, they dogmatized it and turned it into religion and all of that. But it was actually very similar to what you're talking about with Kabbalah and a lot of this energy work and stuff like that. You know anything about that?
100%. Yes, in his native land, his name was Yeshua. And in India, he was going by Issa. And I know quite a bit about it. I've written about it prolifically and extensively, and there's a whole lot of the thing that bothers me about the biblical account of things is that the true stories are so much better, more inspiring, more empowering than the ones they fictionalized and dogmatized. And so it's a shame, but that's how they got their power. And so, yes, he actually left at 9 years old, as was kind of common back then. The best colleges and institutions at that time were in India. And so his family did have some money and they were sending him there. And he was very evolved, obviously, and very rogue and vanguard. And he didn't just go straight to India, went to college, as any college kid might. He did a road trip first, stopped with the Zoroastrians in Persia and spent some time there. And then eventually, yes, made a way into India. And he went to college, he met his responsibilities. For the most part, he was phoning it in because he was already way ahead of all those things. So he got involved with the yogis and the sadhus in India. And it was Kriya Yoga and again, Kundalini Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. I mean, when you get right down to it, what the message of Yeshua is Bhakti Yoga, which is the path of surrender and love, and that's it. And there's some dogmatizing in there, but again, as you already pointed out, the founders of the religious part of that kind of put those in there, and again, they changed the story. And so you may want to edit this out, but I'm going to share it with you, and I rarely do, rarely, but I will go ahead and mention it because you brought it up, and I think it's a safe place. I use a term called underground stream. Underground stream is a very ancient term that mystics have used. I've used it all my life. And inside our societies and cultures, we use it very comfortably. The underground stream, a reference that we make. The underground stream is a reference to the true history and body of knowledge to history and religion and spirituality. And it's typically orally passed on, and it's also documented. And it's always here. And it's been preserved by mystics, and it always has been. And if you plug into it, what we call the 93 current, you begin to get access to that. And so what I'm sharing with you is that what we discover and what we realize on the underground stream. And again, when a bunch of us mystics are combined together, when I was at the convention of the OTO in Washington, D.C. years ago, for example, we're not like, oh, did you know? We're not like, wow, conspiracies. We just talk casually and comfortably about it because we all kind of know this stuff. And so here's the big, bold statement. And I don't know how to say it other than I can say, what if it's possible, or maybe you could consider, do whatever you want to be able to preface it with, but, or there's another account, another version, that the individual that we know as Jesus, Yeshua, not only was in India for those 18 so-called missing years, which is kind of bizarre. Like they know where the kid was born, and then all of a sudden there's 18 missing years. And also the places he was at, the ashrams that he was with, invited him back. And there are accounts that he was able to resurrect from the crucifixion experience, have a near death experience through mystical practices and some alchemy and some other things where he was able to survive this. And his devotees and aspirants and apostles took care of that, and they begged him to stay. And so he ended up kind of retreating and returning to India. And there's good record of that. Again, in India, it's all documented. They're not conjectures. And that's one of the beautiful things about going to India is when I travel sacred sites in India, these are the actual sites and people know where they happen because they've been documenting them for thousands and thousands of years. And so it's very accurate. So yes, and again, for me and for many of us, the way with which this shifted and when he went back to India and what he did from then on and how people rallied for him to be able to preserve his presence here on earth, all these things are far more profound and empowering for us. And that helps us bypass the organized religious aspect of that. So yes, to answer your question shortly, I'm very familiar. Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with him. Yeah.
Well, it seems like it. Yeah, what you're referring to, I think, is called Saint Thomas or Saint Esau Christianity, which is where they believe that he died, but then sort of traveled in a light body back or resurrected and then went to India and then began practicing there or just stayed there. I don't remember the rest of it, but yeah, there's a whole lot of literature on that, and there are even manuscripts in that part of the world and other parts of the world like Tibet, where guys explorers like Nicholas Nitovich found
Yep. Good book.
yeah,
Yep.
they found manuscripts in these monasteries talking about how
That's right.
Yeshua showed up and he was very adept and he was like their master to some extent and taught and learned from them and all this other stuff. So how come that is not put in the Bible? And then back to your point about the 18 years. I mean, it's like, well, we know where he was born, where he was raised, and then all of a sudden there's 18 missing years, and then he's back and he's the Christ. I mean, come on, like you're just going to cut out 18
That's
years?
right.
Like,
If
it's
you were
ridiculous.
watching it in a movie, wouldn't you be like, I'm not watching this movie? I mean, you can't just like suddenly 18 years later, this happens. You can't cut all that out. And so again, that's what turns a lot of us mystics and spiritualists off of the Western dogmas is that early on, I mean, I'm a child. I mean, I'm 4 years old and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, what are you not telling me and why are you not telling me? I mean, bottom line is I no longer trust you because you're clearly keeping something secret. And so that erodes the trust. And so yes, and again, Notovich, that is one of the first exposures we have, which is around the turn of the century of this discovery. But again, we have documented in India, it's documented, written down on paper that he returned and was there until he passed away. And Mary Magdalene is involved, and a child is involved. And there's a whole wonderful, beautiful story that's so much more inspiring. But again, the dogmas take place because church founders, the Council of Nicaea, these these accounts were available then. If you're aware of the Council of Nicaea, is the long process where all the religious scholars and all of the spiritual people and the Christians were getting together to decide what was going to be canonized, what wasn't. And they basically, there was a bunch of bullshit stuff floating around back then. And there was a bunch of real stuff that, again, didn't fit into the agenda of we want to create a church that has dogmas and power. And I don't mean power in a bad four-letter word way. And again, in many ways, it's necessary because people are just run amok if they don't have it. But so it formed into something of an organized religion and stripped them of that because if we knew the truth, as the Templars found in the solemn, that's what they found. That's another story, and that's a wonderful story. If we know the truth, then we're not going to sign up for a Western religious dogma organization. We're going to return to the East, and they don't want that. They want to be able to bring all the benefits of it, but they also want to concentralize it and keep it to themselves, And in a similar way, we as mystics, we're not on the fence or confused about who Moses actually was, the Pharaoh of Akhenaten. I mean, I went there. I was there a year ago. I traveled the lost city that was virtually erased from history. And again, what bothers me and why I've written all this, my next book, is all these stories. and in a dramatized way, but they're all true accounts. And the true story of Akhenaten and the Exodus is far better, and partly because it's not so magical, so you don't have to like stretch your imagination to buy it. There's some fantastic things that take place, but most of it is stuff that you can say that's I can see that happening, like that's real, and it was documented and it was virtually erased from history, and now it's coming to the surface again. And I think again it's inspiring, and we love the mysteries. We love being able to find the truth, and the truth is always makes so much more sense than the fiction stuff. And it's more inspiring because again it realizes, look, I can't connect to a Moses character on top of a mountain and pillars of light. I mean, I've seen some similar things, so I get that. But what I can relate to is some that has more human attributes. And the reason avatars are personified forms of the God power is because this only with this way, with a Buddha or an Acharya or a guru or Yeshua himself, only when they're personified can we relate and think, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it. And again, in Hinduism, they look at the Buddha as an avatar. He was already realized in light when he appeared. And Buddhists look at him as a person that became that way. Now, why do avatars appear like normal people and then become that way and have gurus and masters themselves? Because they're putting on a show, you could say. So because they want us to know that we can do it too. And they're doing that by example.
Yeah, I like all of that. And what you're talking about is sort of a decentralized, bottom-up way of approach to spirituality and mysticism versus the top-down approach of religion, which, with gatekeepers and you got to go to this guy to get forgiven and all of this other stuff. And yeah, and not only that, but also all the lies and disinformation. I mean, that stuff bothers me. And part of this show is to get that information out. I mean, people don't even know Jesus's real name, Yeshua.
I
I
know.
mean, it's crazy. You don't
I
even know
know.
the guy's name, and yet you believe the Bible's the inerrant word of God. And it's like, if you actually study the history, it's way more dynamic than that.
It's a more exciting, it's more challenging. I mean, the true story of what he did, this resurrection that's magical, what those guys actually did to make that happen so he could survive that, which he didn't care, but he did it for them. What they actually did was far more inspiring, far more empowering, far more miraculous. And again, you're right. And very well put, by the way. You articulate things very well. And it's like I was watching reluctantly. I'm looking at my Netflix things and I'm looking around, or was it Prime? I don't know. And I see something on the Templars. Now, I'm a Templar expert. I am, again, a part of the OTO. I come from that Hermetic background, and I've written a story about that. I know the truth. And here's these professors, college professors at major institutions throughout our country, contributing this documentary that's being told. And every one of them says, well, we don't really know exactly how it started. And I'm like, she's the Payan. What do you mean you don't know? I know, and I'm not a college professor. And so here's these college professors. There's a bunch of people of this new generation tuning into these people and assuming these are experts and they know what they're talking about. And here's this guy, and I don't have a PhD. And so I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? We all know, and it's documented and it's historical, and you can look the shit up. It's right there. And again, all these other people are going to see this and think we don't know these things. These are mysterious. No, we do know them. And again, it does seem to be very conspiratorial, but they're covering these things up because they want their version of the truth to be out there, and that's it. And in a similar way, my son, who's 30, he recommended that I watch Godfather of Harlem with Forrest Whitaker, which I thought was pretty cool. And I was enjoying it, and I had to text him and I said, but here's the thing. Yes, Bumpy Johnson and Malcolm X did kind of know each other, but not like what they're saying in the show. I mean, they're not like best of friends interacting every day. And again, the harm is that it does say real quick at the beginning, fictionalized for dramatic purposes. But nobody watches that part, and they end up thinking this is the true account. And that's what's happening with our spirituality and religions, is that everybody thinks that these are the true accounts. That's what the Western religious Christian Council of Nicaea agenda was, to do this long enough, persist in it long enough, and persecute anybody that disagrees with us long enough to eventually become the new normal, the new truth.
Right. And people need to realize, and they are starting to, that the quote unquote experts are not the experts. The experts, the people who have the PhDs and the researchers at the and in the academy, they're so beholden to the dogma of science that they can't break out of that. And the whole way that the peer review system works and all of that is that anyone who speaks out against the scientific dogma basically gets ridiculed. So they have to stay inside this tiny little
Yeah.
these parameters. So it's guys like you and me and others out there who don't have who aren't a part of these institutions who can actually do real research and discover things.
And here's the thing, Jay, is that this is the underground stream. We are sailors of the underground stream. We are the preservations of it. We, as mystics, we're the ones that are preserving these truths for as long as we can, as well as we can. So they do remain intact, authentic, and stay this way for as long as we possibly can, which could be forever. It could be another decade or so. We don't know. But the absolute factual historical accounts and spiritual truths and paths are still available completely and intact. But it's eroding, and again, people are going to think what they're going to think, and so it is frustrating. And yes, you know as mystics and spiritualists, with the sailors of the underground stream, we know these things, and we're doing the best we can. But again, as you said, the institutions, if the professors don't propagate what they're kind of told to, they're going to lose their jobs. And so they're preserving that, and they think they're experts. And again, guys like me who actually know more and spend way more time studying can defeat them in debate. I'm a nobody. I don't have a PhD, so therefore I'm not worthwhile. Conventional society overrules. And it's kind of maddening and frustrating. But hey, we connect, and the people tune into these things. And listen, I can't tell you, when I was on Jeff Maher, the one that you mentioned recently, I don't know how many people watched. I know that 4 people contacted me immediately in tears and saying, "Oh my God, I saw you." And they become my students because they want to know the truth. They want to know the truth, how to work these things for higher consciousness. And it's my glory to be able to help people that do want and can see that these things are superficial. And again, when I ask them, I'm like, so what is it about you saw on Jeff Mara? I mean, you don't even seem like somebody to be tuning into like an NDE thing. You want something that's far more beyond that. And so they said, I just had this spur of the moment kind of whim, spontaneous. So clearly there was some type of Akashic intervention that kind of put them at the right place at the right time. And that's what they felt. It was like, oh my God, I came here for this guy. I need to talk to that guy. And again, it's not about me, my ego, my name, my personality. It's what I represent. And what we represent, Jay, is we represent the truth, the unadulterated, authentic truth, the genuine truth, and it's far more empowering, inspiring.
Yeah, I think that the NDEs are like a gateway for people who are starting to seek to sort of get into that spiritual mystical world. And then after they listen to 50 100 of those, then they start getting all these dots, and they start connecting the dots, and then they start getting into the more advanced stuff that you're talking about here with the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and the mysticism and the alternative history and all of that.
They do. And yes, it is. And look, what is my book called? Within the Portal. It is a portal, a near death experience memoir and guided spiritual awakening. And this is a portal. Look how thick this book is. This book teaches you not only how near death experience works, but also teaches you how miracles work, how the miracle power works, what it's called, how reincarnation works, and why. And it teaches you all these machinations and mechanics. And and this is done in a way that, again, it's a portal. The near death experience is what people are maybe intrigued by initially. And again, in a similar way, when I was a youth, I was intrigued by magic and ceremony because it was fascinating. It was to me, it had a glamorous effect on me. And it caused me, and again, as Yeshua himself said, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be open to you. He didn't say sit on your ass, it'll come to you. He said, seeking you shall find. In other words, seek. And in the East, in Sanskrit, we have a different saying, and I can't say it in Sanskrit because I don't speak that language, and that is that in the Vedas it says, when you take one, I'm getting a little emotional about it because I think it's so beautiful. When you take one step towards God and God's knowledge, God comes running 5 to you. And so when people follow their instincts and they tune into something that they're not even sure why, again, an NDE thing that these new students of mine are barely even interested in, but they were like, no wonder why I came here. I need to connect with this guy because he's using this the same way. He's got to be here for that, but it's not really what he's really even talking about. And again, many people don't even hear what I'm saying. They don't even hear they only hear the NDE story, and many people hear only the mystical parts and the more fascinating and the work that they can do. And that's what we do, right? I mean, it's a very selfless kind of position. And let's face it, it doesn't pay well. Don't quit your day job because the institutions and the priests and the pastors and the organizations and the professors, they'll make the money, but they're also doing it incorrectly. And listen, have I thought about selling out? Many times I think about it and I kind of want to, but then when I try to do it, I end up telling the truth. I'm like, well, I guess I'll stay broke. I guess I'll stay broke. And so even the students that I have, my new business model is pay me what you can afford. I've got students that can't pay me anything. I've got a student that does some computer work for me, and she's happy to do it because she can and she has no money. I've got a couple students that pay me, and the bottom line is no one gets turned away. No matter who I can help in any way that I can, I'm going to. So I don't turn anybody away.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you do that. And I know other people like you who also have a similar model, and I think that's very honorable.
Well, we can do it as long as we can. I mean, I also want to stay living indoors. I need to protect my material self because otherwise I can't do this work. Bottom line is it takes money to have a website, have a computer and be online, to have a microphone. It takes money to do these things. And my students recognize that and they say, I mean, you know, they give everything they can. I mean, many people will pay me my full professional fee. I'm also a certified licensed counselor and private practice behavioral specialist and have been for many years. Maybe people can pay that. Maybe people can use their insurance to pay me. And again, the bottom line is I don't turn anybody away. Whatever they can do, whatever they can't do, I don't treat them any different. Whatever we arrange, I put that aside and I forget all about it. And I don't even know who's paying what. It shows up or it doesn't. And the bottom line is my heart's there and they know they can call on me.
Yeah. So you mentioned your NDE. Now, most people that have an NDE, in my experience, personally talking to people and then also studying this, most people they're not usually into spiritual stuff when they have an NDE. So, but you're different. You were already studying this. Since you were a kid, you were already, it seems like you were pretty advanced with the various spiritual systems. Why do you think you had an NDE when you really didn't need it?
I love the way that you're articulating things, Jay, because this is exactly, I mean, one of the things I point out in my book and through some of the things that I will talk about is I say, look, I know why you had to have an NDE because you were agnostic, you were atheist, you need to wake up. But why did I have to? And why did you get to dust off and go back to work on Monday? Where I was in a coma for 9 days, forgot my identity, was damaged, and my life was wrecked, completely wrecked for a long time. I lost everything. My soulmate, my material resource, I lost everything. And I'm like, I know what you had to do. So why me? I was already on spiritual, but I already knew all this. Everything they're talking about, I'm like, duh. Like you had this awakening, that's great, but I already knew all this stuff. And so I wrestled for many years with why me? And listen, this is partly what puts me in position. The people that are reaching out to me, Jay, they're in the dark night of the soul. They're like, this world doesn't make any sense to me. Spiritual connection is the only thing that makes any sense. I need to know more about it. I need to know how to do it. I don't want some dogmatized, fluffed up, superficial, shiny thing. I want the real thing, no matter what it takes, because I can't live like this anymore. And again, that's what makes them connect. And so, bottom line is, NDE is what gets me invited out there. And again, that's part of the reason is that it provides a portal. I become a gateway. And again, this book, The Portal, the title is not, this kind of came at the end after it was already written. This is a mantra, a yantra that I designed. Okay. That's true to the Sanskrit yantra symbols and sacred geometry. And that's for meditation. So the entire book is that way. And again, so while I personally haven't really gotten anything out of it on a spiritual level, in some ways I did. It didn't give me new awareness or understanding, Jay. What it gave me was more solidified evidence, proof of what I already knew all my life to be actual because I witnessed it. For 9 days, I'm in a coma, Jay. I'm totally constant awake on the other side within the portal. That's why it's called within the portal. I'm completely aware the entire time. My body's in a coma and it's dormant, but my mind is completely aware with these Akashic agents that I'm having interactions with, and I'm witnessing hundreds of past lives, not just one, not just life reviewed for that life. And so as you noticed, and even as Jeff Maher has said, which he's one of the godfathers of the NDE community right now. I mean, and he's wonderful, and he's heard it all. And I've been on his show 3 times. I'm one of the few people he asked back because, as he said the second time I was even on, he's like, I learn something every time you're here. Like you have stuff that I just never heard before. Your NDE experience is completely unprecedented. And so again, I think it becomes a portal and a gateway, and it provides me with a little bit more tangible results, I guess, from the spiritual phenomena. But again, I never had a crisis of faith or any doubts about those kind of things. I think it ultimately comes down to service, seva in Sanskrit, to be able to serve others. And it provides a gateway and a portal and a way for people to contact and identify with me and be able to reach out and maybe get what they need.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I guess, yeah, that really answered the question because in talking, I realized that by the fact that you had an NDE and not just any NDE, you were literally hit by a truck, like straight up. There's no question about it. Um, it adds credibility and authority to,
That photo I gave you with me with the man, that's me. I don't know who took the photo. I'm assuming it's my son or somebody. I don't remember. I have no idea. To this day, I never asked. But that photo where I'm in a hospital, but with scars all over my face and blood and this respiratory, that's me in the coma. So yes, I wasn't just again, it wasn't like I just had a near death. I didn't have a near death experience. I had a death event. I died. I was killed, absolutely dead, and in a coma for 9 days, and it was absolutely horrifying. So it wasn't like I dusted off the next day and went to work on Monday. You know.
right. Now, you mentioned the dark night of the soul, which is something that you're passionate about solving. And I've experienced this. I think I had probably a dark decade of the soul, to be honest with you, and I'm still kind of coming out of it, if I'm being honest.
It never
What?
truly goes away.
Mm.
And that's a good thing.
And I can see how that would be a good thing because it grounds you in your spiritual awareness. But what is it, and why do we have it?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked because I had a class yesterday with a new student was saying to me, she gave her a little interpretation. She said, my understanding is Dark Night of the Soul is this, but I'm guessing from what you're saying, it's not. And then I was able to explain to her. So I think this is very useful information. The Dark Night of the Soul is an ongoing event. Let me preface it with this. The Buddha said, the best and worst day of someone's life is when they become aware that enlightenment is a real thing. The best day because now they know why they're here. Now they know why they're suffering. Now they know what they need, what they want, and nothing. The worst day because they know in that moment they will never ever be happy in the world again. And then he closed it with, but it's only a matter of time before they become enlightened because they will never stop trying, never, nothing, relentlessly. And this is the dark night of the soul. So the common conventional perception of the dark night of the soul, the term, which has become almost a colloquial kind of trend topic, that's misrepresented is that it's some type of depression or sorrow. But truly, The Dark Night of the Soul was written by St. John of the Cross in the 1500s. And I give lectures on his story too, absolutely mind blowing. And the bottom line is it's 27 stanzas of a poem that he wrote, and it describes the ascent of a pilgrim up the allegorical Mount Carmel to have union with divine realization, to have union with God's love and God's consciousness. And so it's really about the dark night of the soul is the term that's used to describe the awareness that we are separate within our mind and our heart from the God power and divine and divinity, and that we cannot tolerate, we cannot live this way, and yet we're forced to. So the ascent of Mount Carmel in the poem is a pilgrim's journey to sacrifice everything and surrender everything within his soul, mind, and heart to simply attain the top of the mountain, Mount Carmel, to attain union. So it's really about the awareness that we are separated from divinity, and that we only want to have union. Now let's elevate it even deeper. There's a Sanskrit term for this. That's why we turn to the East, because they actually have like explanation for this. St. John of the Cross was way advanced, way advanced. If he wasn't already enlightened, he was on the cusp. I won't know for sure, but if he wasn't, he was on the cusp. And in Sanskrit, we have a term for this, and it's called vira and milan. This describes a state of longing and separation, vira, and union, milan. And in spiritual context, in spiritual practices, which experience is both of these simultaneously. Pardon my emotion. I can't usually get through these are too deep. when I am in deep sadhana, satsang, spiritual practice, my meditations that are emotional, I'm not trying to empty and have no mind. I want all my mind. I want emotion. I want connection, awareness. And what I'm experiencing is an overwhelming, paralyzing degree of Vira and Milan, simultaneous experience of separation and union. I am painfully aware that I am not one with the God power, and blissfully joyous that I am closer in that moment to God than at any other moment because I'm aware of how separate that I'm separated. This is what, again, the paradox in the divine phenomena is that two things can exist simultaneously. In the worldly phenomena, it can't. You can think real quickly between thoughts, but you can't have two at once of the same thing, different things. And so the dark night of the soul really is about what's been talked about for centuries, for tens of thousands of years in Sanatana Dharma, which what people know as Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, eternal truth. That is the awareness that you are separated and that all we want is to have union. And again, this is the catalyst. Recently, again, as you said, you've had the dark night of the soul and you think you might be coming out of it. No, you're not. It's lifelong. And yet, while we can't really end the dark night of the soul until we attain perfect union with the God power, to quote my own book, early on in an early chapter, I say there's only one thing worse than suffering, suffering for no reason. What the Buddha described and what the dark night of the soul affords us and provides to us is the awareness so that we will continue to suffer in the dark night of the soul, but now we know why, and we're not suffering for no reason. Again, there's only one thing worse than suffering, suffering for no reason. We work, we toil, we trouble, we struggle in life. But at the end of a work week, we get paid and we get something from it. And that's why we can get back in there and go do it again. Because we're still trying to make our lives better, more comfortable, more safe. In the spiritual suffering, same thing. You're going to suffer because you are separated from the divine power. But if you're going towards it, you're not suffering for no reason. Now you have an awareness, the best and worst day of your life.
I've noticed in my life that a lot of suffering really just comes from buying into the illusion of separation and then also resistance to what is and judgment.
That's right. It is the id, the ego, the attachments. And again, every spiritual philosophy, the Buddha, the Acharyas, Sanatana Dharma, Yeshua, speak of this exact thing. It's about your attachments. And again, what did the Buddha say in the Four Noble Truths? Life is suffering. The cause of suffering is desiring. To end suffering, you must end desiring. Well, good luck. You're a desire machine. And so, yes, your attachments to all this. And again, having an awareness that, and yes, in the Dvait path, DVAIT is how you would say that in English. The Dvait path is oneness. And in the Dvait path, then you are, it is a way of having an awareness that you're already connected with the divine power. And you are. Your soul is divine. Your mind is not. Your mind is material. Your body is material. But your soul is divine and is eternally been so. But your mind is not aware of this. And so self-realization, soul realization, the yoga path of oneness, Dvait, is to have awareness and full acceptance and awareness that of your divine soul. And then you're done. That's enlightenment. That's liberation. And Advait is an even higher path. And many free people know of this, especially in the West. And Advait, is always a neutralizing prefix for in Sanskrit. And Advait is a oneness and duality, singularity and duality. So I don't want singularity. I don't want single-mindedness. I don't want that. I don't want liberation. I want union. And duality union is to have awareness of it, where you are conscious. So you and I are in a dualistic experience right now. You're there and I'm here. And to merge with the God power in your consciousness, that just puts you one with it, and you become like a drop in an infinite ocean of divinity, and that's perfect. But you have no awareness of this because when you die, your consciousness gets terminated because that's part of the material world. But in the Advait, the bed, they also term it as, which is single mindedness and duality. You experience both. When you die, your body and your mind become divinized and you become aware of your soul and you get to stay that way eternally. I'm up for that. I didn't suffer. If I didn't suffer for an eternity in material existence to simply merge with the God power and just be unaware, it's like, and even in the Sanskrit text, in the Vedas, they describe the oneness path as a divine coma. So, and I can tell you, being in a coma, in many ways, it's beautiful and peaceful, but you're dormant. You don't kind of exist. You have an awareness, but it's not a separation of it. There's no duality to it. And I want duality. I want to see God in the eyes. I want to enjoy the glory of that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that our higher self, if you want to call it that, is sort of like the totality of our being. And then we sort of get siphoned down into this little incarnation as a human, and we're sort of veiled from the rest of ourselves, and where we have this amnesia. And when I've
Mhm.
practiced things like out of body experiences and astral projection, it's almost as though I get merged back with my higher self or the totality of my being. And in a way, what kind of like what you're saying is that when we die, the whole package sort of does the same thing on a higher level and gets merged with the full self, the God source, but then we still retain the awareness.
Right. And again, we have to be very careful because whatever path we choose, if we attain it, the enlightenment path, the self realization, soul realization path, or divine realization, God realization, is eternal, it's permanent. And so, again, in the Sanskrit Vedas, they basically say that the oneness path is like a divine coma. And it's a witch because it prevents you from ever having a oneness of the experience for eternity. And so, again, there's that as we explore the consciousness. And again, in the Kundalini event, in Kundalini, I mean, that's what I was experiencing is a complete oneness with everything. It wasn't just God. It was just the cosmos of existence, and it was wide and profound, but it's not as intimate. It's perfect. It is completely self-satisfying and completely enlightening, and you need nothing else. But there happens to be a better, higher form of that, and where we can experience that. And so, again, everything that you're intimating, everything that you're sharing is absolutely true. And then there's a little bit more, you know?
Well, I hope there's always a little bit more, because if you've reached a point where you know everything, then that's kind of boring. So I'd imagine that on our journey as souls, we're always continually, infinitely progressing and evolving just for the fun of it.
And if I may, but wouldn't it be great if there was a final, ultimate, end, perfect, divine experience where there is no more going? And here's the quality of bed bed Advait spiritual realization, what they call God realization, is that it is perfect, absolute bliss. You are one with the known and the knowing. God is the knower and the know and all that is knowable. You're one with this. And it exponentially increases every moment, not minute, not instant. It expands upon itself. And so you are in an ever repeating state of expansion and awareness and bliss, ongoing exponentially. We cannot perceive this, we cannot conceive of this, we cannot fathom that. And so this is as the Rasic saints in the yoga paths of bhakti yoga have explained, is that there is an end result, there is a bottom of it, there is an end to going down the rabbit hole, and this is the perfect, no better, and there can't be and there wouldn't be, and again, an exponential, perfect, resounding, blissful state of awareness. And again, which I describe in here is I get like a little bit of a tour while I was within the portal, the different dimensions of the heaven, celestial abodes, hellish abodes, material abodes, and a glimpse of the divine abode. And that is that what's taking place there. Again, you get a divine body and a divine mind. What's that look like? I don't know. I mean, I couldn't possibly. It's divine. It's beyond my comprehension. And what's going on there? let's just say there are infinite souls and they're all simply absorbed and immersed in the love of service and God and just appreciating and just grateful, and that's all there is. No, that it's just perfect. And so, and this is what the Rasic saints, which are different than the other acharyas, they're the Rasic saints. Ras means bliss. It is divine bliss. And Rasic saints have been explaining for thousands of years. Yes, there is an end. There is a bottom to it where you can where you don't have to go any further. And this is and by the way, it happens to be one of the easiest yoga paths there are.
Well, a final ending place also sounds very appealing as well at the same time. Um, I think a lot of people listen to shows like this and the NDE stuff because they're in that dark night of the soul, or they might be suffering or going through painful experiences. Um, how do you sort of rationalize why we're here, and do you have any frameworks for understanding that to help people get a better idea of why they might be here, what their purpose is, and to understand their pain and suffering?
The dark night of the soul, another great question, the way you phrase it. The dark night of the soul is that awareness that we have since we're born. For many of us, are incarnating into this existence in this lifetime with this subtle awareness that there's something going on. There's something that we need to find. We don't know what it is, but we know it's out there somewhere and we keep looking for it. And then wherever we go, we're able to see throughout our lives, well, that's close, but that's not it. And here's why. Because your soul within here, it's an infinitesimal, tiny speck. It's so infinitesimally small, but it's within your heart. And your soul is crying out, radiating this need that it wants nutrition, it wants to be fed, and it wants something pure and divine. Nothing else will do. And so it causes this state of unrest and discontent within your spirit, within your conscience, within your mind, within your heart. And so, no matter what you do in the world, you continue to find ways to find happiness, and everything the world tells you to do, and all the religion and everything you do is like, that ain't it. And that's because your soul is saying, keep looking, that ain't it. That's good, but that ain't it. That ain't it. That ain't it. That ain't it. And so we have this nagging, perpetual feeling of unrest because it's our soul that needs something and it will not leave us be. This is the dark night of the soul. And what happens when I am able to share, when my guru and master was able to share these things, when I was introduced to these understandings, I had the same effect on me. I was like, oh my God, that's it. I'll give you a little material example. Years ago, I'm watching a football game or something with my son and baseball, because we're both baseball fans, not so much football. And he says, oh man, I'm really hungry. And I go, what do you want? I go, what do you want to get? Eat? I'm hungry too. What do you want to get? And he goes, you know what? I don't know. I'm having a craving for something. I don't know what it is, but there's something I want. I don't know what it is. And I said, what do you want? Hamburger, hot dog, what, pizza, blah, blah. No, no, no. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not that. And then an In-N-Out commercial came on TV. All right. In-N-Out burger. And he was like, oh my God, that's it. And I want that and nothing else. And I said, but Brandon, his name is Brandon. And I said, Brandon, it's all the way across town. You know, In-N-Out has hell long lines. You know, we got to drive across town, get in line. He goes, I don't give a shit what I got to do. That's what I want. Nothing else will do. In a similar way, we don't know what we want, what our soul is trying to tell us and project to us. It was telling us we want something. And when we come close to it, then it will say, oh my God, that's it. And when we rush up against true spiritual formula and true spiritual and mystical paths and eternal truths, then our soul says, oh my God, that's it. Go towards that. And again, I'm not saying that I am these things, I'm a representative of them, but there are many of the people that will see and hear what I may be saying. Again, 80% of them goes over their head and they're like, yeah, that guy's kind of interesting. And a few of them are like, oh my God, I need to talk to that man right now. And this is again because their soul is saying what my soul said when I met the right teachers and the right things that were accounted in this book. And it said, that's what I want. Go get that. I don't care what it takes. Go get that.
Yeah, what you described right there, I think, is the default purpose of every human on this planet, which
Yep.
is to consciously take ownership of their own spiritual evolution. And I can't tell you how many things I've tried, just like what you were saying, like, is it money? Is it this? Is it that? That's going to make me happy. Maybe it's that thing. Maybe it's that thing. And then one day it dawned on me, no, sitting here in
Hmm.
this mundane thing that I was doing at the time, that's my purpose, to literally embrace that with not judging it, not resisting it, and to take ownership of my spiritual evolution. Like that's the priority, not the business or this or that, all the other crap, you know?
I agree. And listen, as I began my spiritual journeys in my youth, and as I described OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, I mean, look, none of those are bad. I didn't leave those paths because they were wrong. It's because, in my own way of interpreting it, it's like I went. So I look at like Western religions, the dogmatic religions, as elementary school. It's the entry point. And you need rules. You need to learn how to like be nice to other people and eat your lunch and take nap time and all that. You need to know the basics, right? And then Western mysticism and the Hermetic views are like going to high school or even college. And then when we get to the high yoga paths, then it's like going to postgraduate school. And so they're all correct. And again, part of the what galvanizes me with many students and people reaching out to me is it doesn't matter what their background is. Again, the new students reaching out to me just recently are one of them is like really fixated and just adores Kabbalah and Tarot and what I'm sharing with her, how they're joined together and all this. She's blown away. And I'm again, I'm not ever telling anybody, okay, good for this, but now go to this. You get your own journey. Realize on your own, whatever you want, I'm here to help you attain that. I'm your coach. I'm a spiritual trainer. That's really what I am, a trainer. And if you come to me and say, I want this goal, I want to realize this, well, I'm gonna help you get there. I'm training that. I've done it. And so again, whatever path is right for you, we need to keep sampling these, and they all have their merit, and they'll lead us somewhere. And yes, they all lead into something. And we have to trust our journey and keep seeking. And that, as you said, as you asked me initially, what is the basically what you said is what's the purpose of our existence? What's it all about? It is, and it is simple, and it is universal. It isn't different for everybody. How we get there is different for everybody. All roads lead to Rome, but the purpose is the same. We are here to become divinely realized. Capital D, capital R. Divinely realized, to become union, to become one with. That's it. And nothing else will do.
Yeah, you're right. Nothing else will do. That's great. And all of those spiritual religions and systems, they're almost like distortions of the truth, or distorted paths. And then as you go from elementary school to the graduate to postgraduate, you're sort of shedding distortion, getting closer and closer to the actual refined truth. It's kind of what it seems like.
Yes, you're going down the underground stream. You're going down the rabbit hole. And again, as to quote that same quote from Yeshua, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be open to you. To me, that was an invitation. I mean, when I heard that when I was a boy, I did not hear something superficial. To me, it spoke volumes. It said, get off your ass and do and relentlessly search and seek because the truth. And what he was saying is, I am here. I am below all this. I'm beneath all this. I'm the core of this, but you cannot see me because there's all these layers of dogmatic truths above it. So seeking you shall find. Come take one step towards me and I'll come running five to you. But you've got to peel back the layers. You get to peel back all those because the core of it is always the same, whether it's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Sanjin Dharma. The core of it is all the same, which is simply quite cliche to put it in a very cliche term. It is simply divine love consciousness. What else is there? You know?
Yeah. And from my perspective, maybe early on one needs this, but later on you realize that you don't need an external source or authority to tell you what to do or what to believe or anything. You can literally seek and find from within yourself on your own. I mean, you can also you can have a guru or a mentor or something like that that can accelerate your growth, but all of the answers are within us. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. In the Dway path, 100%. That, and yet we're so reliant. In order to pursue for example, enlightenment with the Buddha path, well, we need a Buddha to teach us. And listen, what he did in the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path is he took an infinite amount of mysteries in science and understanding and condensed it into this very simple formula. And same thing with alchemy, same thing with Tree of Life. Here's this eternal set of knowledge distilled into this very simple to understand methods and practices. And so we do need an external source. We need something to teach us. Everything you've done, walk, talk, everything you've done, you've had a teacher. And so the teacher will come, a little bit of an Akashic rush there. The teacher will come and show you how to do it. And yes, you need to do it, and it is within you. Again, your soul is already divine, and so to have awareness of that. But how to do it, we do need that teacher. And then there's the other thing, the Advait, the bed, the duality experience. That does, again, your guru, your teacher, your master, your spiritual trainer comes to you and shows you how to do the exercise, how to make sense of it, the knowledge and the practice. Both of those are essential. But at the end of that, as even in the Buddha path and in Ashtanga Yoga, they both tell you that when you get to the end, when you enter samadhi, there's one final thing you need to do: complete and total surrender to the divine power. Now, Buddhism is agnostic, so that doesn't include the divine power. But even in Buddhism, in samadhi, he says your final state, when you've done all that, when you got it down to the candle flame or the yantra or the mantra, you get rid of that too. Because now you're attached to that. And this is where I'll contradict and I'll differ in what you suggested, is that in that final stage of God realization, you need an external source. You need God's grace bestowed upon you. And he bestows that upon you when you have complete and total surrender, and not until then. And again, suffer little children unto me, as Yeshua said. It wasn't just, it was reminded us to remain innocent and vulnerable and surrender.
I would agree with you 100%. And that goes back to what you said, where you take it one step forward, God takes five towards you. That I agree with 100%. I think, I guess what I meant is you don't need like a priest or something.
That's right. Well, and again, that's what the dogmatic religions did. And again, the concept is true and original. The guru concept and the teacher, acharya, swami that teaches you. And again, I'm a spiritual trainer. Like you go to the gym and you get a physical trainer to teach you how to exercise and do them properly, to do the proper form, the ones that are right for your type of body type. And you need a trainer. It accelerates. And you can figure it out on your own, but it's going to take a long time. You're not going to get the same results. And so, yes, the teachers come and they give us the right instructions, and they teach us why and how it's going to work to inspire and motivate us. And so we still got to do the work. And this is, again, part of the struggle that I have as a spiritual trainer, is that I'm always reinventing and modifying and customizing and to inspire and keep it fresh for my students, because otherwise we need results. We need to see how it's going to change us. We can't just do it in theory. It's got to be evidence. We've got to feel it. And again, this is what I think many people experience with me, is I'm not extraordinary. I mean, I'm annoying in a lot of ways. I talk way too much. I talk loud. But again, people aren't responding to that. They're resonating with, you know what? I don't know what it is about this guy, but he's genuine. It's authentic. And that's what I want. I don't care about his personality. It's the fact is, I want truth. And again, I don't care where it comes from either. Whatever is true and sincere. I don't like pop music because it's commercial. I don't otherwise. And so I always joke and say that I don't like country music. Oh no, I love real, true, original country music that's sincere. I love it. Anything that's from heart. And so that's what we're drawn to, and that's what we need. And that's what we're seeking, you know?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that's being put out these days, music, whatever it is, it's superficial and it's commercialized and it's tuned in such a way that it doesn't enrich the human mind, body, spirit. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I have another student that just responded to me. I give people some instructions that are custom for them. And then I also gave them access to my book, the audio book, the ebook or the print book, whatever they choose, to be able to experience this and get the training that they need. And then also I gave some of them from Kirtan to use to add to their meditations. And one yesterday, or yesterday said to me, I've been listening to Krishnanand Kirtan, and many people are familiar with him. He's won many Grammys. He was with Neem Karoli Baba. He's the one who changed his name. And Neem Karoli Baba is an absolute enlightened personality. There's no doubt he's a divine personality. There's no doubt about that in my mind. He's an avatar of Ram, or actually, I'm sorry, of Hanuman. And so the difference is, and I said to this person, I'm not poo-pooing on Krishnadas Kirtan. I think what he does is absolutely wonderful and it's necessary. But I said I can't advocate or discourage that. I'm simply saying that what I'm providing is kirtans that are written, composed by a Rasic saint himself and sung by devotees that are related, that are connected to him. And so for me, I can't speak about that. That's fine and that's good, but I can't speak on that. All I can say is here's what I use and here's why, and use it if you like. And so again, we do have to find the right flavor, you could say, that's going to resonate with us and what we want to attain. Do we want oneness with everything, the enlightenment, or do we want God realization, or do we want to continue to go celestial abodes and heavenly abodes and material abodes?
Right. So you mentioned Kundalini awakening earlier. I know a little bit about this, but I'm not an expert on it. What exactly is Kundalini? What's an awakening?
You have your seven main chakras. You have 114 total, but you have seven main chakras. And at the base of their chakra in the Muladhara is there's your coccyx in the material sense, and the coccyx is where your Muladhara is residing. And your psychic, spiritual, psycho-spiritual energy that makes you conscious, aware, etc., is in a dormant, compacted, distilled state within that chakra. And it is active on various levels to different people. For most people, it's completely dormant. Non-spiritual people, it's very dormant. And this is the primordial energy. So if a couple of atoms colliding can blow up an entire city, well, this energy is far more potent and powerful. And so, and minuscule. And so through Kundalini practices, Tantra was the one that my priestess used. It was a sexual Tantra, which was wonderful. And it was also, so it was beautiful and enjoyable, as well as really challenging, is that through Kundalini yoga practices, there are different paths of it. What you're doing is you're activating that primordial power, that primordial energy that resides dormant within you, and you're waking it up. You're making it restless. You're basically kind of smothering it till it says, I got to get out of here, and it starts to wriggle free. And as it does, it begins to ascend up your sushumna and up these two ascending and descending channels along your spine, along your chakras. And what it does is it coils between them. And as it does so, it activates each chakra. And now they're always all active to some degree. What it does is it's ringing them awake. It's putting their bells on. It's activating them. And as it goes up and then down, again, we're to come out of the distillation process as described in the 7 stages of alchemy. Distillation is just that. It is a process of purifying a substance. You're using an up and down motion with fire and heat to distill something to burn out all of its impurities and retain and to emphasize its pure natural source. And so once you distill your primordial Kundalini energy through the chakras, each one is distilling and purifying even more, and does this many, many times. And then eventually, when it joins and the ascending and descending current both unite within the Sahasrara chakra, it causes a cataclysmic explosion. And your Sahasrara chakra, called the thousand petal lotus, expands. Now, the reason it's called the thousand petal lotus, yes, it's something of a metaphor. But if you've ever seen, first of all, the lotus flower resides in a layer of mud on the bottom of a pond, literally just dark, dross mud, and it's a little seed. And it slowly works its way up through the water to get to the light. And if you see a lotus flower, a video of it expanding and opening, which it does daily, as a Kundalini experiencer, when I see the image of a lotus flower opening, it hits me on a level that's indescribable. I mean, I can physically and consciously feel the sensation of it opening. And so, again, this is described as the sort of shock of the thousand petal lotus is your consciousness, and it's when above the third eye, and when the ascending and descending currents unite, they activate and cause it to absolutely open and unfold and expand. And again, that's the only way I can put it, is that you literally feel and are aware that your consciousness, your awareness is expanding. I'm not saying that I was omnipotent or omnipresent. I had semi-omnipresence, which is a contradictory term. I was able to perceive, hear, visualize, be aware, in tune with a wide spectrum of region and consciousness all around me. Yet I was still myself. And basically, in order to handle the Kundalini event, your body has to rewire itself because it's too much current. It's kind of like plugging your house into not your through your breakers, but yeah, plugging into the power source itself from the power company, like straight in, your house will blow up. And so it can be very painful and very traumatic. And I would say that a good 30% of people that are in institutions are not crazy. They have had Kundalini events and awakenings, and they can't handle it, they can't manage it, and they need direction, they need help. And so it's very common that people have Kundalini events that will go mad. Madness is a big part, can be very common with it. And so it takes some skill and some training and understanding to be able to activate it. But as people come to me to try to understand that and begin to work with these energies, the first thing I do is I remind them, okay, before I even begin to consider helping you with this, you need to clean some things up. You need to clean your life, your mind, because this stuff is dangerous. And if you're not somewhat more pure as a vessel, you can't handle the current. And so you got to get some things cleaned up in our diet, in our thinking, in our actions, the way we live our life. And so, because it's a very powerful and overwhelming event. And so it's also alluring. I mean, even as you hear about it, I mean, when I first heard about it, and when I first started studying it after it happened to me, because again, when it happened, I had this word Kundalini buzzing in my head, didn't even know what it was. And then I went and looked it up. And again, this is our spirit, our consciousness, remembering that we've done some of this in the past, in some past life, and it's activating, it's saying, hey, do you remember this? And it's kind of drawing us to it. So it can be a very overwhelming and very powerful experience. And it's not for everybody, you know?
What are some of the signs that someone might be experiencing this uh, on a subtle level? Or because obviously, if it happens all at once, it's obvious, but it might be happening slowly over time, as I understand it can. What might be the signs of that?
Slowly, I wouldn't worry about. And again, the signs would be a paradigm shift in awareness. You become less self-conscious in the sense that you're less ego conscious. Your perception of reality and the environment that you live in, the world around you, is more um, empathetic, empathic, because you're connecting to the overall consciousness rather than just your own. And so one of the first symptoms would be that a sincere and possibly intense things of empathy. Now, understand that the term empath and empathy is, again, another overused in this current YouTube culture we have. And that people are just saying, well, because I get easily overwhelmed. I'm talking about true empathy where you are not just identifying with people's issues and their problems, but feeling their pain, feeling that, and it's, but in the same way, in a good way, you can also feel their bliss and their happiness too if it's there. And so the early symptoms would be an awareness that wasn't there before of empathy and sensitivity to people's spiritual place in life and intuition to that rather than their material, and being able to see kind of beyond that. Now, again, part of the precursor and for sure a long-term effect from my Kundalini event is just that. When I meet people as a professional counselor, as a behavioral counselor, people came to me to quit smoking, get off of drugs, fix their marital problems, with all that stuff. The thing is, The moment they walked into my office, the moment I saw them, the moment I felt their aura, the moment I interacted with them, I could see what they're truly looking for, what their soul and spirit is looking for, not their body. And so this is an absolute symptom of my Kundalini effect that I'm in tune with and intuitively know. And I'll give you a quick example. I had a woman that came to see me to quit smoking as a hypnotherapist. Okay. Within 15 minutes, that was solved, completely solved. And she said, "Oh my God, I didn't come here to see you about quit smoking, did I?" I said, "No." She said, "Shit, you just started smoking about 6 months ago and you're 35 years old. You're 40 years old. You did that because your spirit was trying to find a way to contact me so you could get some other learning." And so she became my student in my spiritual student for many, many years, and her whole family too. It manifested this issue. And the again, I knew the moment she walked in, I knew what she was really there for. That this syndrome of smoking, this was a presenting issue, as we say in my behavioral clinic business. The presenting issue was a facade, something that her spirit manufactured so she could get a higher learning and truth to something else. And again, this is a symptom of Kundalini effect that even with you, I put it on hold, I put it on pause, I turn the volume way down. I don't feel that I have the right to have intuitive sensations or insight to you unless you give me permission to ask me to invite me to. And so when somebody invites me to, then it's no holds barred. I can actually clearly see what they're truly seeking, what they truly need. So that is often a sense of a Kundalini symptom. And I want to caution people that may be experiencing that for the first time or gradually is that you've got to work with it and practice it and study it, because if you don't, then you're like a doctor with no training. You've got to go to take regular class in school to continue to improve, because otherwise you might kill somebody. And so, and again, a lot of people with the NDE event, this is what can irritate me within the NDE culture, is that people have this spiritual awakening because they're NDE, and then they go out and start teaching spirituality to people. And I'm like, you haven't studied anything. You went to bed one day, had a vision because of the near-death experience, and now you think you're like the next Messiah, and you're misleading people. You haven't done the homework. You don't even know what Kabbalah is or how it works. And so we have a responsibility to do the work, put in the training, get the true, authentic underground stream knowledge before we start putting these things to practice. And so when I meet somebody that may be having some Kundalini events going on, which I met many, and they didn't know what was going on, I was able to kind of help them and coach them and say, you need some guidance. You need to be able to shape this up, because otherwise it's going to run rampant and it can devour you.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people who are quote unquote insane or institutionalized are probably just people that had one of these spontaneous awakenings and they have no idea how to handle it and it just fried their brain.
It's overwhelming. And that breaks my heart. When one particular client comes to mind, this is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant creative man, soft of heart, so intelligent. He can solve, he's like a savant with a kid, and yet he cannot hold a job, function in the world at all, because he's existing in a completely different dimension of reality. And he sees layers of reality that nobody else sees. And he can't function in the material world. And so I worked with him to be able to do that as best I could. So he could have an apartment and live on his own and not be institutionalized. And there was a time when I had advised him, I said, listen, I won't say his name, almost did. And I said, listen, what you and I are talking about right now, do not talk about this at the breakfast table. Your family will think you're crazy and they will call someone. And he calls me like the next week and he says, and he's crying and he says, I need your help, Scott. They're here to pick me up. And I said, what happened? He said, I didn't listen to you. I started talking about the breakfast table, the aliens visiting his backyard, that he was people that the things he visited with all the time. And they're here to take me away. And I said, I can't stop it. It's a 5150. They're going to take you in. I said, I'm going to do what I can to get you out. And eventually we did, but it took months to get him out because he had to prove that he was stable and sane by their standards. Again, a brilliant man. And I knew early on that this man had had a Kundalini event from a brain trauma, actually, that triggered it, because he was attacked when he was in college and brutally beaten with to death, almost to death. And it was brutal. And it changed, rewired him completely. And he had a Kundalini event. And he had this awareness and perception on magnitudes and levels that were absolutely wonderful and beautiful, but he could not manage them. He could not. He needed training. He needed somebody to help him maintain and manage this.
Well, I hope the awareness of this kind of thing gets out there so that happens less often. Same thing with plant medicine, because that's also been demonized
I
quite
agree.
a.
I agree.
Uh, so you were talking about, you mentioned alchemy as one of the things that you're proficient in. From what I understand, alchemy, well, so conventionally, when people think of alchemy, they think of turning, base
Lead
metals.
into gold.
Yeah, in something like that. It has nothing to do with that, right?
No. Well, there is there's practical and spiritual alchemy. Practical alchemy is what you do in the lab. And listen, I'm a master certified, literally documents on my wall, certified master in both. And I'll tell you, practical alchemy was really hard for me. Spiritual alchemy, I kind of skated through. I mean, I was like adept at that. Practical alchemy, I probably almost blew up my house 4 times. I have a full lab and I'm doing these things. And so the lead into gold, it is a real thing. And listen, I belong to the IAG, the International Alchemy Guild, which is was founded actually long ago, and Sir Isaac Newton was a member of that. And so I have a very secret password to be able to get in where they're at in Germany. And so Isaac Newton was also interested. Well, he was an alchemist. He took his role. I think it was Cambridge. He took his role simply there because they said, "Look, if you shut about alchemy, if you don't talk about it, we're going to fund all your work, and you can do what you want, but only be public about your scientific work." And he agreed. Okay, so he was just using that to be able to have the privacy and the resource to be able to do his alchemy work. And so there is an alchemical formula and process to turn lead into gold, which is only a couple atoms different from each other, by the way. And but the truth is that what it takes to go through that is not just a physical laboratory set of exercises. Alchemy is about fusing your mind and heart into the project. When you do things are astrologically corresponded and numerologically and all these other kinds of things that have to be factored in. And so you're fusing your mind and spirit along with it. And so by the time you achieve the philosopher's stone, the lead into gold event, you don't care anymore. You've gone through so much, you have become illuminated to the point where material things do no longer matter to you at all. You're rich in soul and awareness and consciousness. And so therefore, even though you may be able to turn it into gold, you don't care, you don't need it. You're beyond material consciousness, you're beyond material things. And so whether we look at it as a metaphor of turning the leaden dross of our soul, of our being into the gold of spiritual consciousness, which is truly what it is, or a physical, literal thing of a physical element to another element, the truth remains the same. It is a 7-stage system to be able to develop from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness. And that's it. And the same thing. Tree of life, same thing. It is, we got the Sephiroth with their seven chakras, Kundalini, 7 stages, seven tiers on the tree of life. Again and again and again, we see the same formula.
And from
So
what I understand,
the lead into gold. I'm sorry. So I want to summarize it. So the lead into gold is just that. It is a possible physical, real thing, but who cares what you go through when you get it? If the few alchemists that may have pulled that off, they just don't care. They're not going to advertise. They're beyond material consciousness now. They're beyond material things now, and that's the true beauty of it.
so it's become a spiritual system, basically.
Yes, it is. And again, yes, it is. It is the hermetic system of Kundalini yoga.
Right. And that's what I was going to get into next is the association between alchemy, hermeticism, and maybe even the Templars and stuff like that. How does that all relate?
Same things. First of all, the Templars is a little bit of a different situation. What the Templars found, and this is documented in my next book that's coming up, it's wonderful. It's going to be a fun, fun thing. What the Templars found was, as we talked about Yeshua's time in India, well, they found the physical documented proof of this. Okay. What gave them carte blanche latitude to do and do whatever is because they basically went to the Pope and said, "Hey, by the way, look what we found." And the Pope was like, "Oh my God, don't give that out." That's going to unravel our complete organization. So do not do that. And they weren't threatening. They were servants of Christ. And so the Pope simply said, if you do that, it's going to be chaos, zombie apocalypse. People are going to kill. They're going to lose their shit. And so for the public's good, keep it quiet. And secondly, for our good. And in exchange, we're going to give you complete free reign to go and do whatever you want in these very dark times. And eventually it kind of backfired and they reversed that. And so what the Templars were doing and practicing in Solomonic magic was indeed alchemy and Kundalini, etc., but and in Rosicrucianism, but it's done in a different sense. And again, those are really servants of that particular path of Christianity. And the rest of them, the 7 stages of alchemy, and again, Kabbalah's tree of life, these again are not, these are the exact same system told in a different dialect. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure. Sometimes I get lost. I get in my own diatribes, you know?
Oh, it sounds good to me. And you mentioned Solomonic magic. That relates to the King Solomon character, right?
Yes. And so the Hermetic, again, what we have is Akhenaten was a Hermetic spiritualist and was a spiritual revolutionary and rebel. And this is where we get the Moses character, which Mose really means in Hebrew means son, favorite son. And so they change the name and all these kind of things. That's a whole other story. It's really wonderful too. And so what we have is again the Hermetic paths that evolve and change and go into this. Again, I got lost. Say it again. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just asking about King Solomon magic
Yeah,
type
yeah.
stuff.
And so what we have is as the yoga paths came into what it was then Western Asia and became Egypt and all these things, that as it changes and goes through over time, they become exactly those. And so the last area of that is in King Solomon. Again, King Solomon was an absolute hermetic magician. I mean, he was very into the occult, and that's what was that was the reigning thing at the time. And so again, in ceremonial magic and in the occult systems, we all revere Solomon and Solomonic magic. And again, the Torah, the Tanakh, and for certainly the New Testament Bible and Old Testament Bible, the Bible versions of that, they water those down. And by the time you get to the Old Testament version of the Torah and the Tanakh, it's completely watered down where it doesn't exist anymore. But even in the Tanakh and Torah, the origins, the original Hebrew Bibles speak very eloquently about Solomonic magic and King David and these relationships. They're very profound. Again, it's very clear that these were ceremony and ritual that were used as tools, mystical and spiritual tools, to alter and change your consciousness and cause awakenings and cause paradigm shifts in Kundalini.
Yeah, and the Vatican knew about all this stuff, and they practice all of it behind closed doors, and they don't reveal it to any of us.
You know your
And
shit, man. That's pretty good. Yes, they do. It's still so you hear about these great heists of like the Louvre Museum. I've seen some of those great heist things. Someday, some mystic is going to get into the Vatican library, the one that's subterranean, and they're going to find, unless, did the papacy destroy what the Templars found? What's actually in there? The other gospels that were by Mary and the true handwritten gospel by Yeshua himself and Judas. Judas was not what people think. This is his right hand man and was to the very end. He sacrificed himself too. And so if I'm the papacy, I destroyed those a long time ago. I don't ever want them to even have a chance of getting out. But that's not how people are. I like to believe, and I pretty much logically believe that those documents are in those archives, they're in those subterranean chambers within the Vatican, and they're still there. And someday somebody will find them. Somebody will break in, and instead of stealing some Rembrandt out of the Louvre, they will steal those things and produce them. And the whole house of cards of organization will completely come tumbling down. And then UFO thing, the zombie apocalypse, and who knows?
Yeah, I hope it comes out at some point in my lifetime. That'd be nice. But when you look at the church, they have a history of hoarding things, so I don't think they destroyed it. And
I
we,
agree. That's what I think too. I think there's a party that even though you're probably smarter to destroy it, there's a party that says, but I can't. And you can't. It doesn't belong to you. But they don't have a moral conscience. I don't think so. I don't know.
yeah, and when you look at the practices, the subtle practices behind the overt practices that they reveal with the sacred geometry and the architecture and all the stuff that they have going on there. There's a lot going on that has nothing to do with mainstream Christianity. It's sun god worship. It's paganism, various different types of things that you talked about the Council of Nicaea before. There's some evidence that the so Rome was very pagan culture and not Christian at all, and then it sort of grafted Christianity onto these different gods and things that they practice. I don't think any of that went away. It's all still there. It's practiced behind closed doors. They just don't tell us about it.
That's right. Part of the underground stream. It's still present, it's still there. And when you seek, you shall find. When you go down the underground stream, you connect with the 93 current, as we like mystics like to call it. You connect with that, and then the right people come the right ways, and you get introduced to those things. And for sure, again, as an example, the symbols. In those days, very few people, very few, I mean, literally a few, like a handful, throughout time in Roman history, were actually crucified in crosses. It was way too expensive. They're not going to spend that kind of money on some poor guy that didn't give that. They're really now is a big deal, but back then was just a pretty minor criminal. Okay, they put him on stakes. That was it, just one pole. The cross has represented spirit descending into matter for thousands of years before that. The Ankh, as the Egyptians had the loop around it to represent the other part of that, which was reincarnation, which, by the way, Yeshua also spoke about. He was also vegetarian. And so these symbols, sacred geometry, and all the things you're referring to, again, my next book is it is a collection. So I'm like the memoir master now. I wrote my first one, and then I won some awards, and then this one because the death experience happened, which I never plan on doing. And the other one is going to be a memoir of my past lives, the ones I witnessed while I was within the portal, and of many other people's lives that expose the true origin and history of the underground stream of the religions and paths. And they expose this. And again, what we see is that the origins of the symbols and where they come from, what they mean, how long they've been around, they're primordial, and what they truly mean and come from. And again, the beautiful thing is when we tune into the truth of these things, we realize with these symbols that we all have this moment where we're thinking, I knew it. I knew it. I sensed it. I was aware. And again, that's what primordial is about. Primordial is about evoking, like a yantra, like a visual instrument device. This is primordial. It is there to evoke your unconscious, your higher conscious, your primordial conscious that is already aware of all these things. And so, yes, all that is there. And hopefully it comes to surface, but I don't
I think humanity is ready for it, even for people that
know.
are not initiated
You're that
consciously.
much of an optimist?
Well, more than I am a pessimist, but I don't know. I look at the world and I see, old systems falling away and then people that control them fighting for dear life to keep them alive and things like the internet and shows like this, I think are reaching a lot of people and there's sort of a grassroots bottom up awakening happening. But we'll see.
Well, and I hope so too. But Jay, I see my videos on YouTube gets a handful of views, and you get a handful of views. And meanwhile, the ones I mentioned about the Templars, the ones that are getting it all wrong, they're getting tens of thousands of views, getting millions of views. And I'm like, there we go. And so I also know that I don't do what I do to change the world. Again, I have my spiritual fulfillment is only provided to me through my connection with divinity and with God. My worldly fulfillment only comes from assisting other mystic spiritual seekers. And if one person out of only, let's say only you only get 500 views of your video. If one person says, I want to know the truth and goes deeper and connects with one of us because of it, then it's worth it, right?
Yeah, that's how I see it. If one person watches it and gets something out of it, then the show is successful.
My guru is also a religious revolutionary. He turned the entire yoga system and thing completely on its ear by restoring to what it truly originally was. And listen, he now has over 90 years on this planet, like Neem Karoli Baba and some of the other true avatars. He has millions of followers throughout the world. And and yet there are millions of others that get exposed to him and don't get it and just move right on. They don't, and again, it goes over that, or they only get parts of it. And so I think it's a little bit of both. I think that whether somebody gets what I'm fully saying and can really go to the next level or not, I've had an impact. We have put the right seeds in the right places. And again, that's what I think I kind of see my life's mission, my life purpose is doing is like Inception. I'm planting seeds that will eventually, what we're doing today is we're hopefully planting seeds for people that when they're ready will start to blossom into their own little lotus flowers.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. So we're coming up on an hour and 40. You want to close out?
Sure.
Okay. So after this, people might want to reach out to you and check out your books and services. What's a good place to send people?
Thank you. I offer one service in three forms. I am a spiritual guide. Again, I'm not a guru, I'm not a master, I'm not enlightened. If I did, I wouldn't be here. So I'm none of those things. I am an adept and I'm a scholar, and I have spent my life training and teaching these things. And I only want to give people the authentic ones that are original, not some version of them. And so one service in three forms. There, my guidance is in the books that I produce, they're in my readings that I produce, which I call spiritual insights, and they're also in the workshops and presentations that I give. I give weekly classes that are free, just on join on Zoom. And then I also have private training sessions. And again, whatever someone can afford. If they have a sincere heart and they say, I want your help, and I can feel it. And I'm not going to turn anybody away. And people get a lot out of that. And the readings and insights, my system for readings is not simply tarot reading. It's a single system that synthesizes, and it's very ancient, synthesizes Pythagorean numerology, tarot, astrology, and then I added several years ago Kabbalah's Tree of Life and the Orient I Ching. So one reading gives you insights from all of these. Now, these are not predictions, psychic predictions. They are systems for to help you to evolve with spiritual clarity, to be able to create and establish a sadhana practice and program for yourself to be able to develop your consciousness. And same thing with my books. So I have several workbooks on mystical paths, and again, the Within the Portal, and several other things. This is my fifth book. I'm an award-winning author, so I know what I'm doing. And so withintheportal.com, it's real simple. Withintheportal.com is links to all my services. There's a landing page there for all that. And again, if people have a question, just reach out and ask me. My email, Krishnanand, is Krishnanand at withintheportal.com. I'm accessible to everybody. I answer every email. I answer all my phone calls. I'm not on some ivory top mountain where unreachable. Reach out to me. And if you want some help and you're sincere from the heart, I'm going to help you.
Well, thanks for sharing
Well,
that. And thanks.
if I may, let me add to that. When I say it's like a sliding scale, honestly, because I'm a behavioral specialist, some people can use their insurance to pay for me, which is great for them and me. And again, the sliding scale is simple. Whatever you can afford. Again, I'm not going to turn anybody away. And then I'm going to give everything that I have. You give what you can, and I'm going to give you all that I have. My books, my readings, my counseling. I'm going to give you all that I have.
Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me, Jay. I appreciate it. You've been a real joy to talk to you, man. I enjoyed it. One night I went to bed alongside my beautiful soulmate wife, that I just celebrated our 10-year anniversary 2 months earlier in India and Nepal, traveling sacred and spiritual sites. I lived a spiritual life. I was successful. I owned my home. I had a lot of things going for me. Went to bed that night, and 16 hours later, I was in ICU in a stage 3 Glasgow coma. When my family was being told that I would never wake up, and if I did, I'd probably be vegetative. My life went from light to dark in an instant. On June 19th in 2013, I was killed. Dead, mangled, bloody, dead on the street, and killed. I was in my corner office, working as a private practice counselor. Several years before, I had abandoned my construction career that was pretty lucrative, but it wasn't fulfilling for me. So I began this hypnotherapy thing and helping people quit smoking and lose weight, and it turned into something very profound as I was helping save lives from addiction, poor behaviors, relationship issues, all kinds of things. And I became very successful at it, and it was very fulfilling for me. So I'm working in this private office overlooking a park when I started in a sublet kind of thing. And I get 3 clients that morning that text me to reschedule. That happens, but never 3 in a row. Suddenly I had several hours to kill. I was back to back all day with clients, so I didn't bring any extra work with me to the office that day. That morning, I rode my motorbike to work. I have a very unusual motorcycle from Italy. I rode my bike to work, and I suddenly had a few hours to kill, so I decided to go up the street to the clinic and get a physical that I was kind of overdue for, just a routine kind of thing. Went downstairs in the parking garage, got on my bike, pulled out, and for the first time in 7 years in that office, I turned right instead of left. To this day, I do not know why. Never did I ever do that, because the left turn was quiet side streets into town. The right turn was intersections and boulevards. I never did before, I never did since, and I don't know why to this day why I did that day. About 3 or 4 blocks later, I pulled up to an intersection, and I had a green turn arrow just for me in the left lane. I was the only person in the left lane. And as I eased out to make the turn, a full-size SUV went through the light on the other side and hit me in the face, killing me instantly. Life can go from light to dark in an instant. On the corner was a tire store, and there was a man standing out front of the tire store on his cell phone. He was only there that morning because his daughter persuaded him, reluctantly, to get tires on her car to help her. And he was standing outside waiting on the cell phone. Saw the accident occur, was the first man on the scene. His name is Pastor, I call him Pastor Tom because he's a pastor of all the people being on the corner that day. As he ran over to the scene, people started yelling at him, leave him alone, paramedics are on their way. And he started pulling me out and said, screw it, God put me here for a reason. He saw that I was dead. Bleeding from my eyes, my nose, and my mouth. And began reading my last rites to send me to heaven. On the other corner is a Jack in the Box restaurant. 2 paramedics at the front of the drive-thru line were getting lunch that day. Had they been in the back of the line or wanted tacos instead of burgers that day, I wouldn't be here. They're on the scene in seconds, bring my body back to life. I choose my words very carefully. My body was being brought back to life. My mind, my spirit, my consciousness, my chitta had catapulted on the moment of impact. I did not have the out-of-body experience hovering above and watching the accident scene, being revived. I catapulted to the other side instantly. I was like, fuck this, I'm out of here. The paramedics brought my body back to life, and I was in a stage 3 Glasgow coma. That's synonymous with death. EMTs literally shrug their shoulders at that point and say, it's up to God now. It's important to note that these little string of miracles, pastor on a corner, the paramedics on a corner, my right turn instead of left for the one time in 7 years at office. And also the shirt I was wearing was this one, the Museum of Death. I have a collection of t-shirts from around the world, from places that I've been. Stonehenge, the Great Hadron Collider in Switzerland, little mementos that I have, and this is the one I chose that day. The paramedics sheared it off of me. My editor for the book stitched it back together for me to make it look like Frankenstein's monster. So I'm wearing it today because I'm still here. Just by that Jack in the Box was another man sitting on the corner, a young man. His name is Sam. Sam is my son's best friend. Sam called my son and said, Brandon, your dad's been in an accident. He said, how do you know it's my dad? He said, it's his bike. No one has a bike like that. This young man, Sam, didn't live anywhere near that part of town, never goes to that part of town. The only reason he was there because that day he had an appointment at the DMV right behind the Jack in the Box. It was out on the corner. This is how my family found out I was going to the hospital, because otherwise my phone and everything was scattered in the accident. They took me to ICU. Now, my body is in a coma, and I'm in ICU. My family comes to the hospital, my partner of 10 years and my son, and they're met by 2 doctors and a priest, not a good sign, and told, if he ever wakes up, which he probably won't, no one has, from a DAI, brain trauma, diffuse axonal injury, where the white and gray layers of your brain separate, plus a stage 3 Glasgow coma. I'm literally a medical miracle. My partner, she went into instant denial and said, okay, great, we'll take him home soon. And her daughter said, did you not hear what the man just said? Meanwhile, this is going on the planet Earth, and I'm in the spiritual realm. I'm in a dimension that I now call the portal, the in-between state between life and death. The Tibetan Buddhists call it the bardo. Western religions refer to it as purgatory, an in-between state. And I am fully conscious and aware, interacting with and having telepathic conversations with what I call Akashic agents. You could call them angels, whatever you like. I refer to them as Akashic agents, the Akashic space where all knowledge and time is stored. And I'm in direct contact with them and I'm comforted and I'm at peace. I have no desires in this dimension. No wonder why people don't want to come back from the near-death experience, because on the other side is beautiful, it's peaceful, and you have no desires. And you see with clarity, objective clarity, how reality is and should be. And on earth it's not. It's a very distorted place in the material realm. I was given an incredible offer by these Akashic agents. The life review is a standard feature of the near-death experience, where you see your life pass before your eyes. And the reason this happens is because these spiritual administrators that facilitate these events, they want you to learn and see, like Ebenezer Scrooge with the Ghost of Christmas Past. They want you to see what you might have done better in your life to correct them and become more spiritually inclined. This is why so many people come back from their ND with awakening spiritually. They go from being agnostic, even atheist, to suddenly being spiritual. I was given an incredible offer. I was given an offer of multiple past life reviews, that I could see thousands of years of past lives. And I said yes, but I only want to see lives that pertain to my soul's journey in spirituality, where I made progress and where I did not, so I could learn from that, because I just simply want to become closer to God. And I was granted this, and like a cinema, like an instant download, all this was in my mind, and I witnessed it. Thousands of years and hundreds of lifetimes. Incredible. I also had a life preview. I was given some visions of the various future options or destinies that I could have. If I live a spiritual life, it would unfold this way. If I lived a material life, it would unfold this way. Again, it goes to Christmas Future is showing Ebenezer Scrooge, this is what happens if you live the way you are. And that's why he goes back and changes. So many people do receive the life preview as well, but very few retain it and remember. I remembered all this vividly over time. We'll get to that. This is because before my death experience, I began my spiritual journey in this lifetime in my youth. By the time I was a teenager, I was already pretty much a religious scholar. Before I was 20, I was already proficient in tarot, astrology, numerology. In my 20s and through my 30s, I traveled to India, Nepal, visited sacred sites and temples simply to go there and meditate and be in these spaces. So I was deeply involved in my spiritual paths and methods and practices far before my near-death experience. It is possible to disqualify me to have these extraordinary features to my near-death experience. I saw some of the most significant historical events in spirituality throughout history, and I saw the true origins of many of our religions and spiritual paths. Profound and beautiful things. When I came back, when my soul spirit was dispatched to my body, I was in a coma for 9 days. The entire time I'm completely conscious and aware. On the other side. Don't know what's going on earth, don't care. Don't want to go. I'm getting a sense of what's happening and I do not want to go back because I know with the life preview what's waiting for me. Disaster. Please understand that the emotions that I have are not from my own traumas. I don't like to be a source of pain to those that I love. My son was working at his In-N-Out burger place when 19 years old and was called and told his father was in the hospital and was going to die. My partner, somebody that she relied on every day to make her life profound and complete and safe, she was told it was never going to come back. Also, I had, when I was in the coma, scars all over my face. My face was shattered from the accident. And they were told, if he ever wakes up, which he won't, but if he does, even with extensive plastic surgery, he'll never look the same again. 9 days later, when I woke up on my birthday, I was fine. Almost barely a scratch on me. Miracle after miracle is occurring. Understand that this collection of miracles that I'm sharing with you now is a small fraction of the miracles that continue to occur over the several years of my near-death experience. My near-death experience was not just those instant of death or those 9 days in a coma. It continued on intensely for 4 years. I was in constant contact with the other side, the portal, and Akashic agents within there. My consciousness was far more aware and in touch with the portal dimension than it was in the material dimension. It made it very hard to live in the world. I could not relate to the material world. The divorce rate with NDEers is actually very high because many of them disconnect from their material lives, the people that they know, their family, and they can't relate to them and their family can't relate to them anymore either. They become casualties. In addition, I had a severe brain trauma. I wasn't like I came back to my body and went back to work and had this new awakening. I had to learn how to walk and talk from scratch. When I woke from my coma, I did not know how to speak. I had to learn like a baby. My identity had been deleted, like it is when you reincarnate. I reincarnated as myself. And every lifetime, your memory is virtually deleted. It's still in there somewhere. All the stuff you've been in through many lifetimes is there, in layers of your consciousness, but you can't access it. I was confused which lifetime I was in. The first words that I spoke from my coma were, how'd you guys get to, what are you doing in London? I recognized my son and my partner, she and I had been together for 10 years. I recognized them as not these people in this lifetime, but people that I'd known for many lifetimes. And I could not understand how they, the nurses and everybody else that I saw around me, couldn't see themselves this way. They're identifying themselves in this particular identity. And I was confused. I could not reconcile a singular life when I was witnessing and experiencing multiple lifetimes all at once. It made it very hard to exist within the material realm and be normal, so to speak. Over these several years, it's very common in the near-death experience, not very common, but for more severe ones, it can take 7 years for your spirit and consciousness to stabilize back within your body. This is again why the divorce rate can be so high. It's something like 70-80% with severe NDEers. Over the first 4 years, as I struggled to try to balance between both existences, the material realm and the spiritual realm, my career suffered. I was a counselor, private counselor, saving many, many lives. And I became like a surrogate family member to the people that I served. They adored me. They came and visited me in the hospital. And that is one thing that I did see from within the portal down on earth. People would come pray over me and cry over me and say, please don't. I had clients that would come to see me and say, you're a part of our family. We can't, you've been there with us for everything. I had entire families, couples and their kids that would come to see me, and I loved them all. I could not return to work. I had to learn how to walk and talk, and it was arduous and difficult. I was virtually strong and healthy. I had very few injuries from my accident. It was bizarre. Eventually, something emerged, and I have now four titanium bolts in my spine. And I had a very rather dark near-death experience after that episode, during that episode. The rest of the time, I'm with the light. I'm not seeing passed on loved ones. They moved on. And I just was taking a rest within the portal. Now let me segue for a moment. Allow me to briefly review my services. I serve my purpose on a sliding scale. All my services, books and readings are given to students and clients who seek me out for assistance regardless of what they can pay for them. Some pay nothing, some pay my professional fee, and some have exchanged their time to assist me with computer work or other assistance. Bottom line is, no one gets turned away. Anyone who seeks my assistance gets it. What I offer is really just one service, but in 3 forms. I offer guidance in books, readings, and counsel. I've published 5 books and 10 workbooks. I've been writing all my life. It is my passion. My latest book, Within the Portal, a near-death experience and guide to spiritual awakening. My near-death experience story is a collection of undeniable miracles, of triumphs and tragedies. The story covers an epic journey from Southern California to the Pacific Northwest, ashrams in the U.S., and takes place in exotic lands within temples of India, Nepal, and Egypt. The story reveals the magic of soulmate love as well as the machinations of spiritual forces such as karma, reincarnation, the near-death phenomena, and of the power of divine love consciousness. This story is not a dry academic account of events and knowledge. It is a passionate sharing of documented miracle events. Even the divine power of miracles is explored and explained. It is emotional and moving. I literally died for this book and have given it my heart and soul as a gift to those who seek more than the supernatural or psychic phenomena and yearn for a personal, intimate union of their minds and hearts to a love that is not temporal, but divine. It is a navigator to help spiritually awaken and then assist awakeners in navigating to and through the dark night of the soul and arrive at the divine light of spiritual union. I compose every detail of this book to be profound and enlightening, but every word of it is pure truth. Nothing has been fictionalized or even exaggerated. And even the cover of the book is carefully and spiritually inspired. This cover was given to me through a series of visions I had. I collaborated with the artist and had her create an authentic yantra true to the yantra formula of sacred geometry and layers of symbolism. It too is an authentic device for meditation and contemplation. It is an access and entry point to spiritual understanding. It is a portal. My other books are likewise made to inspire and provide guidance. The second form of service I offer is readings. They are a synthesis of tarot, Kabbalah's Tree of Life, astrology, the Pythagorean numerology, and the I Ching. One reading gives you insights from all of them. They cover your entire life from birth to death and reveal specific insights to 4 main categories: your life purpose, why you've incarnated into this identity, your soul, exposing and exploring your divine essence, your outer personality, which is how your soul expresses itself in this lifetime, and your destiny, the legacy you can leave behind and what you can experience after this life's death. The readings I provide can be 10 to 16 pages, some of them. Finally, I offer my services as a spiritual trainer. Just as a physical fitness trainer prescribes what type of exercises you should do and coaches you how to do them, I provide customized spiritual practices and coach you how to do them smart and safe to become more spiritually fit. Just as a fitness trainer motivates you and finds creative ways to inspire you to make great progress, I work with you too. One-on-one, coaching and motivating you to break free from material bindings of worldly living to experience spiritual living. It's not always easy nor gentle, but you will make spiritual progress and achieve spiritual fitness. My training services include teaching and instructions. I also live stream free weekly class and get-togethers. Anyone can join. Regardless of what someone pays me, whether it is money, a service, or nothing at all, I will give all that I have. My knowledge, my books, my instructions, and coaching from the heart. You give me what you can, and I will give you all that I have. A heartful connection with the divine is what protects me from spiritual despair. Serving other seekers who can benefit from my experience and life studies protects me from worldly despair. Only God's sweetness can satisfy my soul, but only satisfying other spiritual seekers can satisfy my humanity.